Hi FIN230ers, I've just made up the rubric for your third assessment task, and so I'd just like to go through that with you now and talk to you about what I'm going to be looking for in this particular assessment item. This one you have two sort of written responses, so it's a little bit different in structure to the first assessment task. And the first one, you put in a role as a journalist for the Financial Review and asked to analyse the impact of an influx in foreign savings, both in terms of interest rates and in terms of the value of the Australian dollar. Okay, so I've broken those obviously into two criteria. The first is the discussion of the change in interest rates, but using the loanable funds model of interest rate determination. Okay, it's really important that you focus on using that model to analyse this event. Okay, so the categories or the level that you've achieved are separated really by subjective judgment in a lot of cases. For example, for a high distinction, it's totally focused. The students provided an excellent discussion of the loanable funds model and correctly analyse the given event within that framework. They've supported their analysis with graphical diagrams. In other words, give me a diagram, okay, of what's shifting, the supply or the demand of loanable funds, and be able to talk to that diagram in your analysis. Okay, now the distinction between a high distinction and a pass, in a pass level you may have some errors in accuracy. You still will have provided a fair discussion of that model because it's fairly straightforward to get that information. You have correctly identified or analysed the event. In other words, you've told me that it will have the correct impact in terms of that model, but you haven't supported that analysis with a graph. Okay, so that's sort of the levels of attainment, I guess, and you can choose where to pitch yourself, I guess, but that's the criteria I'll be using to assess your response. Now that's a total of 4 marks for that particular one. You're also asked to analyse the impact in terms of the value of the Australian dollar. You cannot do that in a loanable funds model, okay? You have to use a demand and supply of Australian dollar model to analyse that impact. So there will be 2 separate sections, okay, or 2 separate pieces of analysis. This one has a maximum of 2 marks because it will be much briefer. It's much more straightforward, okay? Again, it'd be nice to have a graphical representation of what's happening there, and then, your analysis of the outcome. In terms of writing style and mechanics, much of this is the same as from the first assessment. What I will point out though to you, because I have put you in a particular workplace role, a high distinction, it will be written in an appropriate style as per the question, a newspaper column in the Australian Financial Review. I don't need you to put it into columns in your Word document, but write it as if it were written by Ross Gittins in the Sydney Morning Herald or one of the Financial Review. In other words, it should be very accessible to me as a reader to follow and understand what you're talking about. Okay? So that will sort of be, a high distinction student will make the effort to do that, I guess is what I wanted to reward and to point out to you. So that's for question 1. In question 2, there's another rubric, okay? And basically in this one, you're a advisor for Merrill Lynch, and you're going to advise Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook about some ways he can raise additional equity. Now, Facebook is already a listed company, so I don't need you to talk about the initial public offering. That's been and gone with this company. I want you to look at the methods for raising additional equity once you're already a listed company. Okay, now that's a maximum of 6 marks because it's a one-only sort of event. I want you to discuss those different methods and give me the pros and cons of each. And again, I'd like to point out in the writing style, a HD student will write it as a client brief. Okay, so sort of tailor your answer to the set question. I haven't just asked you to list and describe the ways, I've presented you with a particular problem. So the more that you tailor it towards answering that, the better in terms of writing style your mark will be. Now, in both of these, I've just got a satisfactory, unsatisfactory mark in terms of referencing. Okay, it's too hard on it. I mean, the sources of your information will be primarily the text. You don't really need to go to a lot of other sources of information, although you are more than welcome to. But really, you can do it or you can't do it. Okay, and I'd like to think that everyone is going to get 1 mark here for citing their references correctly and including a reference list at the end. Okay guys, I hope that these rubrics are useful to you in preparing your responses, and if I can be of any further help, please don't hesitate to post a forum message or email me. Okay, I'll talk soon.